The entire restaurant fell silent as the billionaire slammed his hand on the table, pointing a manicured finger at his own terrified son. "Go on," he sneered at the trembling waitress. "Talk to him. Tell him the specials. Mock him if you want. He's broken. He can't hear a single word of your pathetic lower-class voice." The other diners looked away uncomfortable, but Preston Calloway grinned, expecting the waitress to stutter or shout. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know that with a few simple hand movements, she was about to destroy his entire world and save his son. The rain battered against the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of the Obsidian Chicago's most exclusive dining establishment. Inside, the air smelled of truffle oil, aged mahogany, and old money. For Sarah Mitchell, the smell was suffocating. She adjusted the collar of her starch-stiff uniform, wincing as the fabric rubbed against a bruise on her shoulder, a parting gift from moving her heavy second-hand sofa into a smaller apartment that morning. At 26, Sarah was exhausted. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a severe bun that pulled at her scalp, and her feet throbbed in shoes that had lost their cushioning months ago. "Table 4, Sarah, and fix your face," the floor manager, Monsieur Gautier, hissed as he glided past her. Gautier was a man who believed poverty was a contagious disease, and he treated Sarah as patient zero. "It's Mr. Calloway. He specifically requested a server who knows their place. Don't mess this up." Sarah's stomach tightened. Preston Calloway. Everyone in the service industry knew the name. He was a tech mogul, a real estate shark, and a man whose ego was large enough to have its own zip code. He was notorious for tipping heavily, only after reducing servers to tears. "Yes, sir," Sarah whispered, picking up the heavy leather-bound menus. She made her way across the velvet-carpeted floor. At table 4, the prime spot overlooking the skyline, sat Preston. He was wearing a navy suit that cost more than Sarah's entire college tuition had been before she'd had to drop out. He was loudly berating someone on his phone, his voice booming with the confidence of a man who had never been told no. Sitting opposite him was a boy no older than 12. The boy Leo was small for his age. He wore a suit that looked uncomfortable, his tie slightly askew. He stared intently at the tablecloth, tracing the patterns with a fork. He looked incredibly lonely. Sarah approached the table, waiting for a break in Preston's conversation. There wasn't one. "I don't care if the zoning laws are strict, Arthur. Buy the councilman if you have to. Just get it done." Preston barked into his phone, then slammed it down onto the white tablecloth, rattling off the silverware. He looked up, his eyes cold, and scanning Sarah like she was a piece of furniture that didn't quite match the decor. "Water," he commanded, not waiting for a greeting. "Sparkling, and a whiskey neat. Make it a Macallan 25, if you even have it in this dump." "Right away, sir," Sarah said softly. She glanced at the boy. "And for the young gentleman." Preston let out a short, cruel laugh. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the sound of a hammer hitting the glass. "Gentleman, he's hardly that." Preston sneered, looking at his son with undisguised disdain. Leo didn't react. He didn't even look up. "Bring him a Coke. Not that he'll ask for it. He doesn't ask for anything." Sarah felt a prickle of heat on the back of her neck. She hated bullies, but she needed this job. She needed the tips. Her landlord had given her until Friday to pay the arrears, or she was on the street. "I'll be right back," she said, her voice steady. As she walked away, she heard Preston mutter, "Useless, just like his mother." Sarah's hands shook as she prepared the drinks at the bar. She watched the reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Preston was leaning across the table, snapping his fingers in front of the boy's face. Leo blinked, but didn't flinch. "He's doing it again," whispered Marco, the bartender. "Rich people think they own the world. Poor kid." Is the boy? Sarah trailed off. Deaf, Marco confirmed, polishing a glass. Calloway brings him in here once a month, usually just to complain about how much the special schools cost. It's heartbreaking. Sarah stared at the boy. Leo's eyes were intelligent, sharp, and filled with a profound sadness that a 12-year-old shouldn't know. He wasn't just ignored, he was being erased by his own father. Sarah placed the drinks on her tray. The weight of the tray was heavy, but the weight in her chest was heavier. She took a deep breath. She had to survive the night. Just survive the night. When Sarah returned to the table, the atmosphere had shifted from tense to hostile. Preston had finished his appetizer, which another runner had brought, and was now visibly agitated. You took your time, Preston snapped, as Sarah set the whiskey down. My apologies, sir. The bar is busy tonight. Excuses are for the poor, Preston retorted. He took a swig of the expensive whiskey, grimacing. Now take our order. I have a meeting in an hour. Sarah pulled out her notepad. Of course, the chef's special tonight is a pan-seared halibut with... I can read. Preston interrupted. I'll have the steak. Rare. Bloody. He gestured dismissively toward the boy. Ask him what he wants. Sarah turned to Leo. She offered him a warm smile, trying to catch his eye. And for you? She asked, clearly, making sure her face was visible. Leo didn't respond. He continued to look at his hands. Preston chuckled a dry, rasping sound. Loud enough? Or are you just stupid? Sir, Sarah asked, confused. He's deaf, Preston announced loudly. Heads at nearby tables turned. Deaf as a post. Broken goods. Sarah felt a surge of anger so strong it nearly made her drop her pen. I understand, sir. I can point to the menu items. No. Preston said, a wicked glint appearing in his eyes. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. He looked like a Roman emperor deciding whether to feed a gladiator to the lions. I want you to talk to him. Sir, if he cannot hear, talk to him. Preston raised his voice, silencing the entire section of the restaurant. Go on, mock him. Yell at him. Tell him he's a burden. Tell him he's the reason his mother left. It doesn't matter what you say, sweetheart. He can't hear you. He lives in a world of silence. He's defected. Sarah froze. The cruelty was breathtaking. It wasn't just rude. It was abusive. I won't do that, sir, Sarah said quietly. Preston's face reddened. Excuse me, do you know who I am? I am Preston Calloway. I could buy this building and turn it into a parking lot by tomorrow morning. I gave you an order. Speak to my son. Tell him he's a disappointment. Do it, and I'll tip you $5,000 right now. He pulled a money clip from his jacket pocket and slammed a stack of $100 bills onto the table next to the breadbasket. $5,000, Preston hissed. More than you make in a year, I bet. Just say the words. Leo, you are a burden. Say it. The restaurant was dead silent. Even Gautier, the manager, was watching from the shadows, terrified to intervene, but signaling Sarah with his eyes to just do it and appease the monster. $5,000. It was enough to pay her rent for months. It was enough to fix her car. It was enough to breathe. All she had to do was say cruel words to a boy who couldn't hear them. It was a victimless crime, technically. Sarah looked at the money. Then she looked at Preston's smug, oily face. Finally, she looked at Leo. Leo had looked up. He saw the money. He saw his father's angry face. He saw the waitress's hesitation. He knew exactly what was happening. He had seen it 100 times before. He braced himself, his small shoulders hunching, waiting for the humiliation. Sarah closed her eyes for a second. She remembered a small house in Ohio. She remembered sitting at a kitchen table, her hands moving in the air, laughing with her younger brother Toby. She remembered the silence that wasn't empty, but full of love. She opened her eyes. She dropped her notepad into her apron pocket. "No," Sarah said firmly. Preston stood up his chair, scraping loud and harsh against the floor. "Then you're fired. Get out of my face." "I said I won't speak to him," Sarah said, her voice ringing clear through the silent dining room, because speaking isn't the only way to be heard. Preston blinked, confused by her defiance. Before he could shout again, Sarah turned her body fully toward Leo. She didn't speak. She raised her hands. Her fingers moved with fluid, practiced grace. It was American Sign Language, ASL, executed with the speed and emotion of a native speaker. "Hello, Leo." She signed her facial expression, softening into genuine warmth. "My name is Sarah. I like your tie. It is very cool." Leo's eyes went wide. His jaw dropped slightly. The look of resignation vanished, replaced by a shock so pure it was heartbreaking. He sat up straighter. You know." Leo signed back his movements, slightly clumsy from lack of practice but understandable. "You know signing?" "Yes," Sarah signed, ignoring Preston, who was staring at her with his mouth agape. "My brother is like you. We talk all the time. You are not broken, Leo. You are important." A tear leaked out of Leo's eye. He quickly wiped it away, but a smile, a real tentative smile, broke across his face. "My dad says I am stupid. He says I am broken." Sarah's expression turned fierce, though she kept her movements gentle for the boy. "Your dad is a fool. He has ears, but he doesn't listen. You have a voice. Never let him take it." Preston Calloway looked around the room. He saw the other diners. They weren't looking away anymore. They were watching with rapt attention. Some looked moved, others looked furious at Preston. The humiliation he had intended for the waitress was boomeranging back to him. He had been exposed not just as a jerk, but as a father who didn't even know how to communicate with his own child, while a peasant waitress could. "Stop that!" Preston barked, waving his hand as if to swat away Sarah's signs. "Stop waving your hands around like a maniac. What are you saying to him?" Sarah turned to Preston. She didn't shrink back this time. "I asked him what he wanted for dinner, Mr. Calloway, since you were unable to." "You insolent little," Preston sputtered. He grabbed the stack of cash from the table and shoved it back into his pocket. "Manager Gautier, get over here." Monsieur Gautier materialized instantly, sweating profusely. "Mr. Calloway, sir, I am so sorry. This woman is harassing me and my son." Preston lied his voice loud enough to reach the kitchen. "She is making gang signs at my boy. She is incompetent and rude. I want her gone, now, or I buy this place and burn it down with you inside it." Gautier looked at Sarah. He knew she was a good worker. He knew Preston was lying. But Gautier was a coward, and he feared Preston's influence more than he valued justice. "Sarah," Gautier said, avoiding her eyes. "Leave, you're done." "But," Sarah started. "Now," Gautier hissed, "before he calls the police." Sarah looked at Leo. The boy's face had fallen again. He looked terrified that he had caused this. Sarah signed one last thing to him. "Be brave. This is not the end." She unpinned her name tag and dropped it on the table next to Preston's half-drunk whiskey. It landed with a tiny clack. "You can fire me," Sarah said to Gautier. Then she turned her gaze to Preston. "And you can keep your money, but you will never be half the man your son is. He listens better than you ever will." She turned on her heel and walked out of the dining room. Her head was high, but her heart was hammering. She had won the moral victory, but she had lost her livelihood. As she pushed through the kitchen doors and out into the alley where the rain was pouring down, the adrenaline crashed. She leaned against the brick wall, the rain soaking her uniform instantly. She slid down until she was crouching in the mud, putting her head in her hands. "Stupid," she whispered to herself, sobbing. "Stupid, stupid Sarah. How are you going to pay rent now?" She didn't see the black sedan parked at the end of the alley. She didn't see the window rolled down or the man in the back seat watching her with intense interest. He wasn't Preston Calloway. He was someone much more powerful, and he had seen the whole thing through the restaurant window. The rain in Chicago had a way of seeping into your bones, but Sarah hardly felt the cold. The numbness in her chest was far more overpowering. She stared at the muddy puddle gathering around her worn-out sneakers, the neon sign of the obsidian reflecting in the water like a distorted, mocking smile. She had just lost her only source of income. The rent was due in 3 days. Her brother Toby needed new hearing aids, which she had promised to help pay for. "Get it together, Sarah," she choked out, wiping rain and tears from her face. "You did the right thing. You defended a child." But the voice of doubt whispered back, "Righteousness doesn't pay the electric bill." A car door slammed shut nearby. Sarah didn't look up until she saw a pair of polished black Oxfords standing at the edge of her vision. They weren't moving. "Rough night?" a voice asked. It was deep calm and carried an authority that made Sarah instinctually straighten up. She looked up. Standing under a large black umbrella was a man who looked like he had just stepped out of a GQ photo shoot, though his expression was grim. He was tall, perhaps in his mid-30s, with sharp cheekbones and piercing grey eyes. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, but unlike Preston Calloway, he didn't radiate arrogance. He radiated intensity. "I'm not looking for trouble," Sarah said, scrambling to her feet and backing against the brick wall. "I'm just leaving." "I know," the man said. He stepped forward, extending the umbrella so it covered her, leaving himself exposed to the drizzle. "I saw what happened inside. I was sitting at table 7 behind the pillar." Sarah hugged her arms around herself, shivering. "Great. So you saw me get fired. Did you come to mock me too, or offer me $5,000 to dance like a puppet?" The man's jaw tightened. "Preston Calloway is a cancer. What you did in there, it was the bravest thing I've seen in this city in a decade." He reached into his breast pocket. Sarah flinched, expecting a weapon or a subpoena. Instead, he pulled out a simple, stark white business card. "My name is Lucas Mercer," he said. Sarah froze. The name rang a bell. Lucas Mercer was the head of Mercer Global, a direct competitor to Calloway's empire. But more than that, he was known as a recluse, a tech genius who rarely appeared in public. "Why are you talking to me?" Sarah asked suspiciously. "Because you speak the language my nephew speaks," Lucas said. Sarah blinked, the rain dripping from her nose. "Your nephew. Leo." Lucas said the name, coming out heavy with grief. "Leo is my sister's son, my nephew." Sarah's mind raced. "But Calloway is his father." "Biologically, yes." Lucas spat the words out. "But he hasn't been a father to that boy for a single day. My sister Elena, she passed away 4 years ago. Since then, Preston has cut off all contact between my family and Leo. I haven't been allowed to see him. I have to sneak into restaurants just to catch a glimpse of him from across the room to make sure he's still alive." The pain in his voice was raw and jagged. It cut through Sarah's own misery. She thought of her own brother Toby. If someone kept her from Toby, she would burn the world down. "He looked so lonely," Sarah whispered. "He is," Lucas said. "Preston keeps him isolated. No tutors who sign, no deaf community. He wants to force Leo to be normal by ignoring his deafness. It's torture. Lucas looked at Sarah, his grey eyes locking onto hers. I saw you sign to him. I saw him smile. That's the first time I've seen Leo smile in 3 years. Lucas reached into his pocket again and pulled out a thick envelope. He held it out to her. I need your help, Sarah. Preston fired you. I want to hire you. Sarah looked at the envelope. Doing what? War. Lucas said simply. I am launching a custody battle to get Leo away from that monster. But the courts favor the biological father, especially a billionaire one. I need evidence of neglect. I need someone who can communicate with Leo. I need a witness who saw the abuse firsthand. Sarah hesitated. Mr. Mercer, I'm just a waitress. Preston Calloway is... He's powerful. He said he'd destroy me. He will try, Lucas admitted. But he has never fought me before. And now I have a weapon he doesn't understand the truth. He pressed the envelope into her hand. There is $5,000 in there, an advance, just for talking to me. Sarah gasped, feeling the thickness of the cash through the paper. Come to my office tomorrow, 9:00 a.m., the Mercer Tower. We are going to get my nephew back, and we are going to make Preston Calloway pay for every tear that boy has shed. Lucas turned and walked back to the idling black sedan. The driver opened the door, and Lucas slipped inside. The window rolled down one last time. Get some sleep, Sarah. You're going to need your strength. The car purred away into the rainy night, leaving Sarah standing in the alley with an umbrella, a stack of cash, and a burning realization her life hadn't ended tonight. It had just started. The next morning, Sarah woke up in her cramped studio apartment with a headache pounding behind her eyes. For a moment, she thought it was a dream, the screaming billionaire, the deaf boy, the mysterious uncle in the rain. Then she saw the wet umbrella drying in her bathtub and the envelope of cash on her nightstand. It was real. She grabbed her phone to check the time, but her screen was flooded with notifications. Her Instagram, which usually only had pictures of her cat and her latte art, had 99+ notifications. Her TikTok app was buzzing. She unlocked the phone and opened YouTube. Trending #1 in the US. Waitress humiliates billionaire bully, must watch. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She clicked the video. It was shaky footage, clearly filmed by a diner at a nearby table, probably the teenager at table 6, who was always on his phone. The angle was perfect. It showed Preston screaming, his face purple with rage. It showed Leo shrinking into his chair. And then it showed Sarah. Her voice rang out clear and steady from the tiny phone speakers, because speaking isn't the only way to be heard. The video zoomed in on her hands as she signed to Leo. It captured the exact moment Leo's face lit up with that heartbreaking, beautiful smile. It captured Preston throwing the money. It captured Sarah dropping her name tag. The video had 4.2 million views. It had been uploaded 6 hours ago. Sarah scrolled down to the comments. User Patton23. Who is she? Give this woman a medal. That father is a monster. Chi-Town foodie I've eaten at the Obsidian. That guy Calloway is always there, treating staff like dirt. Finally, someone stood up to him. Deaf Power, official. As a deaf person, seeing her sign, "You are not broken," made me cry. This waitress is an angel. We need to find her. Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, her hand covering her mouth. She wasn't just a fired waitress anymore. She was a symbol. But notoriety came with a price. Her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello," Sarah answered tentatively. "Is this Sarah Mitchell?" a sharp, aggressive female voice asked. "Yes." "This is Linda Cross from the Chicago Tribune. We're running a story on the incident at the Obsidian. Mr. Calloway has issued a statement claiming you were drunk on the job and assaulted his son. Do you have a comment? Sarah's blood ran cold. What, that's a lie, I didn't touch him. Calloway's legal team has released security footage, edited of course, that looks ambiguous. They are painting you as unstable. He's threatening to sue you for defamation and emotional distress unless you issue a public apology and sign an NDA. Sarah felt the room spin. Preston wasn't just firing her. He was rewriting reality. He was going to crush her before she could even meet with Lucas. I have no comment, Sarah stammered and hung up. She immediately dialed the number on the business card Lucas had given her. It rang once. Sarah. Lucas's voice was calm, a stark contrast to her panic. I assume you've seen the news. He's lying, Sarah cried, pacing her small room. He's telling the press I was drunk. He's going to sue me. Let him try, Lucas said, his voice dropping to a dangerous low growl. He just made the biggest mistake of his life. He brought this into the public eye. He thinks he can bully you into silence because you're poor. He doesn't know you have the Mercer legal team behind you. I'm scared, Lucas. They know where I live. There are reporters outside my building. Pack a bag, Lucas ordered. Don't talk to anyone. I'm sending a car. You aren't safe there anymore. Preston plays dirty, and if he knows you're the key to Leo, he will try to intimidate you. Where am I going? To the one place Preston can't reach you, Lucas said. My estate. It's time we started preparing for court. Bring your uniform. My uniform, why? Because, Lucas said, we're going to recreate the scene, but this time the judge will be watching. The car Lucas sent wasn't a sedan this time. It was an armored SUV with tinted windows. The driver, a massive man named Tiny, who looked like he ate gym equipment for breakfast, escorted Sarah out the back door of her apartment building, shielding her from the paparazzi, swarming the front steps. They drove an hour north out of the suffocating city and into the wealthy wooded suburbs of Lake Forest. They pulled up to a gate that looked like the entrance to Jurassic Park. It opened slowly, revealing a winding driveway that led to a modern glass and steel mansion perched on a cliff overlooking Lake Michigan. This was Lucas Mercer's world, cold, pristine, and impenetrable. Inside the house was silent. It was beautiful, but empty, much like Leo's life. Lucas met her in the library. He had rolled up his sleeves, revealing muscular forearms, and was surrounded by whiteboards covered in timelines and legal strategies. Welcome to the war room, Lucas said, not looking up from a document. Sarah put her bag down. This is intense. It has to be. Lucas turned. He looked tired. Preston has filed for an emergency injunction to stop the video from circulating, claiming it violates Leo's privacy. But the damage is done. The court of public opinion hates him. Now we need the family court to hate him too. He gestured to a chair. Sit. I need to know everything. Every word he said. Every gesture. Even the things you think don't matter. For the next 3 hours, Sarah recounted the night. Lucas listened with the intensity of a hawk. He took notes, asking specific questions about Leo's reactions. Did Leo flinch when Preston raised his hand? Did Leo look at the exit? Did Preston offer him food or order for him? When they were done, Lucas sat back, rubbing his temples. It's a pattern, Lucas said. Emotional abuse is harder to prove than physical abuse. Preston is smart. He never hits the boy where people can see. He hits his soul. So how do we win? Sarah asked. We need Leo to speak, Lucas said softly. Preston has convinced the courts that Leo is mentally incompetent because he doesn't speak orally. He claims Leo needs a conservatorship, which Preston controls, of course, giving him access to the trust fund my sister left for the boy. Lucas stood up and walked to the window. We have a hearing in 3 days, a temporary custody hearing. I have petitioned the judge to allow an independent translator you to speak with Leo." "Me," Sarah squeaked. "I'm not a certified court interpreter." "I know, but you are the only person Leo has responded to in years. I've convinced Judge Lawrence he's a tough old bird, but fair to allow a supervised interaction. If you can get Leo to sign to the judge to tell the judge what he wants, we win. If Leo shuts down, Preston keeps him forever." Sarah felt the weight of the world settle on her shoulders again. "No pressure. One more thing," Lucas said, turning to her. His expression was unreadable. "Preston knows you're with me now. He sent a package." Lucas pointed to a small box on the desk. "Open it." Sarah approached the desk. The box was wrapped in black velvet. She opened the lid. Inside lay a dead canary. Its neck was broken. Sarah screamed and dropped the box. "A warning," Lucas said, his voice cold as ice. "A canary, because you sang to the world. He's threatening you, Sarah." Sarah trembled, backing away. "I can't do this. He's crazy. He'll kill me." Lucas crossed the room in 2 strides and grabbed her shoulders. His grip was firm but grounding. "He is terrified," Lucas said fiercely. "He sends threats because he is weak. If you run now, Leo dies a slow death in that house. If you stay, we can save him. I will protect you, Sarah. I swear it on my sister's grave. No one will touch you while you are under my roof." He looked deep into her eyes. The connection was electric. For the first time, Sarah realized Lucas wasn't just a rich employer. He was a man desperate to save his family, and he was looking at her like she was the only hope he had. "Okay," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. "I'll stay. For Leo." "Good," Lucas said. "Because tomorrow we're going shopping. If you're going to walk into a courtroom and face a billionaire, you need to look like you own the place, not like you serve the coffee." The morning of the hearing, the sky over Lake Forest was a bruised purple heavy with a storm that refused to break. Inside the Mercer estate, the atmosphere was just as volatile. Sarah stood in front of a floor-to-length mirror in the guest suite. She hardly recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the stained waitress uniform and the messy bun. In their place, she wore a tailored cream-colored suit that Lucas had commissioned for her. It was sharp, elegant, and projected a kind of authority Sarah had never felt before. Her blonde hair was blown out in soft waves, and her makeup was minimal but flawless. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a force of nature. A knock came at the door. "Sarah, the car is ready." Lucas entered. He stopped dead in his tracks. He was wearing a navy suit, his tie knotted with precision, but his eyes softened when they landed on her. For a fleeting second, the impending legal war faded, replaced by something warmer, more intimate. "You look—" Lucas started, his voice catching slightly. "You look formidable." "I feel like I'm wearing a costume," Sarah admitted, smoothing the lapel of her jacket. "Like I'm pretending to be someone important." Lucas walked over to her. He didn't touch her, but he stood close enough that she could smell the sandalwood and rain scent that clung to him. "You aren't pretending, Sarah. You are the most important person in Chicago today. You are Leo's voice. Never forget that." He held out his hand, ready to take him down. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling her nerves. She took his hand. "Ready." The drive to the Cook County Courthouse was tense. Tiny, the massive bodyguard, drove the armored SUV, while Lucas spent the ride reviewing affidavits on his tablet. But the silence was shattered as they exited the highway into downtown Chicago. Suddenly, a black van swerved aggressively into their lane, trying to force them toward the concrete barrier. "Hold on!" Tiny shouted. wrestling the steering wheel. Sarah screamed as the SUV lurched. Metal screeched against metal. The van was trying to run them off the road. "It's Calloway!" Lucas growled, bracing his arm across Sarah to pin her to the seat. "He's trying to delay us. If we miss the docket, call. The judge defaults the hearing." "Ram them," Lucas ordered Tiny calmly. "With pleasure, boss." Tiny jerked the wheel to the right. The heavy armored SUV slammed into the side of the black van. The sheer weight of the Mercer vehicle sent the van spinning out of control, skidding across 3 lanes of traffic before crashing into a guardrail. They didn't stop. "Are you okay?" Lucas asked, his hands checking Sarah's arms for injuries. His eyes were wild with worry. "I'm fine." Sarah breathed, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "He really is a monster." "He's desperate," Lucas said, his jaw tight. That was his last card. Now it's our turn. They pulled up to the courthouse steps. A sea of reporters waited. As Sarah and Lucas stepped out, camera flashes erupted like lightning. Questions were shouted. "Sarah, is it true you attacked the boy?" "Mr. Mercer, are you kidnapping the witness?" Lucas didn't answer. He simply placed a protective hand on the small of Sarah's back and guided her through the crowd. They moved like a single unit, cutting through the noise. At the top of the stairs, waiting by the metal detectors, stood Preston Calloway. He looked impeccable, but his eyes were bloodshot. He sneered as they approached. "You cleaned her up, Mercer." Preston spat, looking Sarah up and down with disgust. "But you can't put lipstick on a pig and expect it to sing opera. She's a waitress. The judge will chew her up." Lucas stepped forward, towering over Preston. "And you're a father who needs to hire thugs to fight his battles. Save your breath, Preston. You'll need it to beg for mercy." Preston laughed, but it sounded brittle. He leaned in close to Sarah. "Remember the canary, sweetheart. Be careful what you say in there. Accidents happen." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but she looked Preston dead in the eye. "I'm not a bird, Mr. Calloway," she said, her voice steady. "And you can't break my wings." The double doors of courtroom 4B swung shut, sealing out the frenzy of the press corridor, but the atmosphere inside was even more suffocating. The air conditioning in the old Cook County building hummed aggressively, but did little to combat the heat of too many bodies packed into the gallery. It smelled of floor wax, stale coffee, and the sharp metallic scent of anxiety. Sarah sat at the defendant's table next to Lucas. Her hands, resting on the polished oak surface, were trembling slightly. The adrenaline from the car crash earlier that morning had begun to fade, replaced by a cold, gnawing dread. She could feel Preston Calloway's gaze burning into the side of her head from the plaintiff's table. He looked unruffled, his suit pristine, his demeanor that of a man who was inconvenienced, not threatened. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. Judge Lawrence entered. He was a man carved from granite with thick spectacles and a reputation for having absolutely zero tolerance for theatrics. He took his seat high on the bench, his eyes scanning the room before landing on Sarah. "We are here regarding the emergency custody petition filed by Mr. Lucas Mercer." Judge Lawrence intoned his voice dry. "Let's not waste time. Mr. Graves, you may call your first witness." Preston's lawyer, Reginald Graves, stood up. He was a thin, predatory man with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He smoothed his tie and gestured toward Sarah. "I call Sarah Mitchell to the stand." Sarah felt Lucas's hand brush her elbow, a silent anchor of support. She stood her legs feeling like lead and made her way to the witness box. As she swore to tell the truth, the room fell into a heavy silence. Graves approached the stand, slowly letting the silence stretch, using it as a weapon. "Miss Mitchell." Graves began, his voice dripping with faux politeness. "Let's look at the facts. You are 26 years old. You work or worked as a server. And according to public records, you are currently carrying over $10,000 in credit card debt. Is that correct? Sarah griped the railing of the witness box. Yes. And isn't it true that you were served an eviction notice at your previous residence 3 days before the incident at the Obsidian? Yes. Sarah answered, her voice barely a whisper. She could feel the judgment of the room. The reporters in the back row were scribbling furiously. Graves turned to the gallery, spreading his arms wide. Desperation. Your Honor, it is a powerful motivator. Ms. Mitchell saw a billionaire. She saw a disabled child. She saw a golden ticket. Isn't it true, Miss Mitchell, that you staged a scene to provoke Mr. Calloway? That you waved your hands in that boy's face, not to communicate, but to confuse him, to create a spectacle? No, Sarah said, her voice shaking. Come now. Graves pressed, leaning in closer, invading her space. You expected a payoff. You expected hush money, and when you didn't get it, you decided to play the hero for the internet. I didn't want his money, Sarah snapped, a spark of anger finally igniting in her chest. Then why intervene? Graves shouted, his veneer of politeness vanishing. Why touch a child that isn't yours? Because he was alone, Sarah cried out. She looked past Graves, straight at Judge Lawrence. I am poor, sir. I have debt. But being poor is not a crime, and it doesn't mean I don't know cruelty when I see it. She took a breath, her voice gaining strength. I have a deaf brother. I know the look of a child who has given up on being heard. Mr. Calloway wasn't treating Leo like a son. He was treating him like a defective product that he wanted to return. Objection, Graves roared. Speculation, emotional manipulation. Overruled, Judge Lawrence said quietly. He was looking at Sarah over the rim of his glasses, his expression unreadable. The witness is answering your question regarding her intent. Continue. Graves looked flustered. He gathered his papers ready to attack again, but Lucas stood up at the defense table. Your Honor. Lucas interrupted, his voice deep and commanding. We can debate intent all day, but there is only one person in this room whose opinion actually matters. And he is waiting in the hall. Graves scoffed. The boy is incompetent. He cannot speak. He has the mental capacity of a... He is deaf, not stupid. Lucas slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. And I petition the court to let him speak for himself. Through Ms. Mitchell, the only person he has communicated with in years. The courtroom held its breath. This was highly irregular. Preston Calloway leaned over and whispered furiously to Graves, his face reddening. Judge Lawrence drummed his fingers on the bench. He looked at Preston, then at Lucas, and finally at Sarah. The child is 12 years old, the judge said. Old enough to have a preference. I will allow it. Bailiff, bring in Leo Calloway. The heavy oak side doors groaned open. Leo walked in. He looked impossibly small in the cavernous room. He was wearing a stiff suit that seemed to swallow him whole, his eyes darting around in panic. He looked at the gallery full of strangers, the imposing judge, and then his father. When his eyes landed on Preston, Leo physically flinched his shoulders, hunching up toward his ears. Then he saw Sarah. She was sitting in the witness box, still and calm. The terror in Leo's eyes paused. He blinked. Sarah didn't wait for permission. She raised her hands, her movements slow and deliberate. Hello, Leo. Do you remember me? The court stenographer's fingers hovered over the keys, unable to type silence. The only sound was the hum of the ventilation. Leo's jaw dropped slightly. He raised his own shaky hands. The lady with the tray. The nice lady. Sarah turned to the judge. He calls me the nice lady with the tray. She's making it up, Preston shouted from his seat, unable to contain himself. She's coaching him." Judge Lawrence grabbed his gavel and banged it once hard. "Mr. Calloway, you are on thin ice. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. Ms. Mitchell, you are under oath. Translate exactly what the boy says." The judge leaned forward. Ask him who he wants to live with." Sarah turned back to Leo. She softened her face, pouring all the warmth she possessed into her expression. "Leo," she signed. "The man in the big chair is the judge. He is the boss of this room. He wants to help you. He asks, do you want to live with your father or your Uncle Lucas?" Leo froze. His eyes darted to Preston. Preston didn't shout this time. He simply stared at his son. It was a cold, dead stare, a promise of retribution. It was the look that had kept Leo silent for years. The boy began to tremble violently. He lowered his hands to his lap, shaking his head. "He's scared," Sarah whispered to the judge, her voice cracking. "Preston is intimidating him." "I am just sitting here," Preston hissed, spreading his hands innocently. Sarah looked at Lucas. Lucas nodded, his eyes fierce. "Do it," his expression said. "Fight for him." Sarah turned her body, blocking Leo's view of his father. She made sure Leo was looking only at her. "Leo, look at me," she signed, making the movements large and emphatic. "Do not look at him. He cannot hurt you here. Uncle Lucas is here. He is strong. I am here. We will not let him take you. But you must tell the truth. You have a voice. Be brave." Leo looked at Sarah. He saw the tears standing in her eyes. He saw the fierce determination. For the first time in his life, he saw an adult who wasn't asking him to be silent, but begging him to roar. Leo took a deep, shuddering breath. A single tear tracked through the dust on his cheek. He raised his hands, and then the floodgates opened. His fingers flew. The signs were jagged fast and desperate. Sarah struggled to keep up her voice, trembling as she translated the outpouring of a child's broken heart. "He says," Sarah started, choking back a sob. "He says my father hates me. He says I am broken. He says my mother died because she was too sad about having a broken son." A collective gasp rippled through the gallery. Even the cynical reporters looked horrified. "He says," Sarah continued, tears now streaming freely down her face. "He locks me in my room when I try to sign. He says sign language is for monkeys. He says if I use my hands, he will tie them behind my back." "My God!" Lucas whispered, his face draining of color. But Leo wasn't finished. The fear was gone, replaced by the pure, hot anger of injustice. He pointed a shaking finger directly at Preston. "He steals the money, the papers. I saw them." Sarah frowned, focusing on the specific signs Leo was using, signs for money signature and fake. "He says," Sarah translated her voice, turning hard. "He says his father makes him sign papers he can't read. He says his father is stealing money from the trust fund his mother left. He says Preston told him if he ever told Uncle Lucas, he would send him to the bad place, where they lock you in a padded room." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Financial fraud, child endangerment, emotional torture. "That's enough!" Preston screamed. The billionaire jumped up, knocking his heavy oak chair backward with a deafening crash. The mask of the composed businessman shattered completely. "You ungrateful little brat! After everything I bought you, I put a roof over your head!" Preston lunged toward the witness stand. His face was purple with rage, his hands curled into fists, intent on reaching the boy who had just destroyed his empire. "Bailiff!" Judge Lawrence shouted, standing up. But the bailiffs were too slow. Lucas was not. Lucas vaulted over the railing, separating the defense table from the floor. He moved with the speed of a man possessed. He intercepted Preston just feet away from Leo. Lucas didn't throw a punch. He didn't need to. He slammed his shoulder into Preston's chest, driving the other man back with the force of a freight train. Preston stumbled and fell hard onto the carpeted floor. Lucas stood over him, placing himself physically between the father and the son. His chest was heaving, his fists clenched at his sides. "Don't you dare!" Lucas snarled his voice, a low, dangerous rumble that silenced the room. "You will never touch him again." 3 bailiffs descended on Preston, pinning him to the ground as he thrashed and cursed. "Get off me! Do you know who I am? I am Preston Calloway." Preston shrieked, but the power was gone. He wasn't a titan of industry anymore. He was just a violent, abusive man, exposed to the harsh, fluorescent lights of justice. Judge Lawrence remained standing, his face red, with a righteous fury that terrified the court clerk. "Preston Calloway, you are under arrest for attempted assault in my courtroom," the judge barked, "and based on the sworn testimony of the minor, I am ordering an immediate federal investigation into the mismanagement of the Calloway Trust and charges of child endangerment." The judge turned his gaze to Leo. The boy had scrambled out of his chair and was clinging to Sarah's waist, burying his face in her suit jacket. Sarah had her arms wrapped tight around him, rocking him gently. Judge Lawrence's expression softened. "The petition for emergency custody is granted to Lucas Mercer, effective immediately. A permanent restraining order is issued against Preston Calloway for both the child and Ms. Mitchell." The judge raised his gavel. He brought it down with a thunderous crack that sounded like the end of a long, dark winter. Court is adjourned. 3 months later. The snow was falling softly outside the Obsidian, but this time Sarah wasn't watching it from the alley. She was sitting at table 4, the best table in the house. Across from her sat Lucas. He looked relaxed, the lines of stress gone from his forehead. And next to him sat Leo. Leo was different. He was wearing a hoodie, he had a new haircut, and he was laughing. He was signing rapidly to Lucas, who was signing back clumsily, but improving every day. "He wants to know if we can get dessert," Lucas translated, smiling at Sarah, specifically the chocolate volcano. "Tell him yes," Sarah signed, "but only if he finishes his vegetables." Leo rolled his eyes, but shoveled a forkful of broccoli into his mouth, grinning. Sarah looked around the restaurant. Monsieur Gaultier was still there, but he was currently hovering nervously near their table, terrified of offending the new owner. Lucas had bought the restaurant a week after the trial. He hadn't fired Gaultier. He had just made it clear that the new policy was kindness, or else. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas asked, reaching across the table to take Sarah's hand. "I'm thinking about that night," Sarah said softly. "The night I got fired. I thought my life was over. It was," Lucas said, squeezing her fingers. "That life was over. This is the new one." Preston was currently awaiting trial in federal prison, denied bail due to flight risk. His assets were frozen. His reputation was ash. Sarah looked at Leo, who was happily engaging the busboy in a game of tic-tac-toe on a napkin. "It's a good life," Sarah smiled. Lucas leaned in. "It needs one more thing." "What?" "A partner," Lucas said. "Not just for the custody case, for everything. I need someone who knows how to listen. Someone brave." Sarah felt a blush rise to her cheeks. She turned her hand over, interlacing her fingers with his. "I think I can help with that," she whispered. Leo looked up from his game. He saw them holding hands. He grinned, made a shape of a heart with his fingers, and pointed it at them. Sarah laughed, the sound ringing clear and happy through the restaurant. She signed back, "Love you too, kid." The silence was gone. Her world was finally full of music. Preston Calloway thought his money gave him the right to silence his son and crush a waitress, but he forgot that the loudest roar comes from those who have been quiet for too long. Sarah didn't just save a boy. She exposed a tyrant, and found a family in the process. It proves that sometimes a single act of kindness can topple an empire. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please smash that like button. Don't forget to share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more dramatic stories every week. What would you do if you were in Sarah's shoes? Let us know in the comments below.